Greetings, fellow Earthlings. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of And Another Thing with Dave. I want to thank all of our listeners from all over the world. Please do subscribe and share if you're not already. All right, let's get into it. We were going to talk about some voting rights issues. How it's getting more and more difficult to vote in the U.S., it appears. I was looking at this article here in usnews.com online, and what they were talking about is a new law passed by Texas, Arizona, and one other state where they were making it harder for people to vote in a number of ways, eliminating absentee ballots, and even going so far as to make it a felony for a voting election official to mail out an application or a ballot to anybody.
And
so that seems pretty wild.
in the name, Dave, of voter integrity, how would that help voter integrity? I mean, how does that help? How does that keep people from cheating? If that is in fact the goal, right?
And has there been any proof of cheating? I don't think so, because the reporter Greg Palast did an in-depth series of reports on this, proving that not only was there no voter fraud, but there was tons of voter suppression. Right. So as the Republicans are screaming voter fraud, they're actively committing voter suppression. And he's got, numbers from a number of different states. In certain cases, he was a part of a lawsuit that forced them to put people back on the voter rolls, even, which is pretty wild.
Yeah, and this is going back how many years, Dave? I think I saw him on Tom Hartman's show discussing this. Oh, I don't know. It was 8 years ago, 9. I mean, it's been a long time. It was certainly well before the Trump administration. I mean, this is not new stuff. It's been going on for quite a while. And I think you and I had talked about Chris Kobach, who was, he, the Secretary of State for Kansas, Dave? And his big thing was voter suppression. That was like, and Trump later hired him for just that purpose. Interstate cross-check. Interstate cross-check was an endeavor that Kobach was heading up, and basically, Dave, would take lists of names, and if your name matched somebody else's name that had been dropped from the rolls, they would go ahead and drop your name as well. So they were just canceling out all these names. And oh, by the way, people that would be suspected of voting for Democrats were more likely to vote for Democrats, which happens to be people of color in a lot of instances. So this whole thing was just like, oh, well, we're not going to try to fight for your vote. We're not going to change our policies and our platforms to try to get you to vote for us. We're just going to eliminate people who we don't think are going to vote for us at all.
Right. And there's been many statistics that I've read that shows that when you make it harder to vote, the Republican Party benefits. And I'm not waving the flag for the Democratic Party. I would encourage people to vote for the People's Party, to vote for a third party. So, I've lost all faith in the two-party system personally, but I'm just speaking to that specific issue of voter suppression.
And now, of course, Dave, with Trump and the big lie that has been put out there for quite some time now, the election was stolen from me. I got cheated, so therefore let's use more of these voter suppression laws. Let's make it harder and harder for people to vote. And it's like going to war, Dave, because of weapons of mass destruction. Well, there weren't weapons of mass destruction, but let's go to war anyway. I mean, this is the same type of thing. This is just absolutely ridiculous. And Trump making unfounded and conspiratorial claims, like And then when it goes through the courts, Dave, and you know how I feel about this, Dave, by the time you get through the courts, and it was like 60 different lawsuits filed by the Trump administration, all of them said, nope, you're out, goodbye, you don't have enough evidence. There was no voter fraud, or at least not enough to overturn an election. Not anywhere close. Sorry, you lose. But he just keeps saying it, and people keep believing it. And now, Dave, as witnessed from January the 6th, people are dying and being beaten because of it.
Yeah, when we should actually be loosening voting laws. It should be very easy to vote. You should be able to, drop your ballot in a 24-hour drop box in a number of places. I mean, there's no cases of somebody breaking into a mailbox to steal ballots. It's just not a thing. So I've been saying this for decades that you should automatically be registered to vote when you get your driver's license, right? Like they have all your information. So you get your license when you're 16. 2 years later, you should automatically be registered to vote. Why would you not be? You don't have to vote, but you shouldn't have to, right? It's just a hurdle. Why should I have to register to vote? Right?
Yeah. Like when I get a driver's license, you already know who I am, where I live, how old I am.
Exactly.
you,
So I take
you
my
have a copy
driver's
of my,
license.
my signature.
So I take my driver's license to the polling place, and I should just be able to vote. Even I didn't even think about this, but even having to register to vote is a hurdle. And why? There's a deadline that you have to register by? Why?
Right.
Doesn't make any sense. You're a citizen of the United States. You should be able to vote, period.
And Dave,
And
go
if
ahead.
there's an issue of people who are not documented citizens voting, well, then we should work on our immigration, but that's a whole different topic. If you're in this country, the laws in this country affect you, therefore you should be able to vote on them,
Yeah,
right?
I think that's pretty
Pretty
basic to
simple.
democracy, isn't it, Dave?
Pretty freaking simple. If you're within the
And,
borders, whether you got here legally or not, that's a whole nother topic. But what we're talking about is laws that affect people within these borders. So anybody within these borders, just to make it more simple, anybody within these borders over 18. And why 18? Why not 16? You can join the military to go off and die before you're 18. Why can't
can
you
you?
vote?
I thought you had to be 18.
I think you can join at 17 and
Wow.
16
Okay.
with a parent signature.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not certainly against that, Dave. But the numbers do show that the younger people are, the less they vote. So if you expanded it to 16, you're certainly going to
And
get more voters. But let's face it, the major portion of those people would still not vote.
right. And what, your average 16-year-old doesn't know, right?
And
Doesn't know
doesn't care.
squat. Yeah, really doesn't care. I mean, come on, they're just getting hormones.
I mean, come on, Dave. I mean, you and I have talked politics for a long, long time. When we were in high school, Dave, I don't remember that being a major topic.
No.
Just wasn't really something that was on our
Girls,
radar.
girls.
Yeah, bands, chicks, and where was the next party, and for me, it was a lot of sports, and but that wasn't something that was really on our minds. But I still think it should just be easier to vote. It's certainly it's like we have a one party in this country, Dave, that seems to want to make it really easy to get a gun, but really hard to vote. And that just seems so unbelievably backwards to me. And you know me, Dave. Dave, you're a law-abiding citizen. You are not guilty of any felonies. You're not guilty of beating up your wife or a history of mental illness or anything like that. And you want to protect your home. I don't see that it's a problem that you should be able to get a gun. But shouldn't it? I don't know. Shouldn't voting be easier than getting a firearm? It seems like the country would be safer. you know?
I would think. I would think it definitely shouldn't be more difficult. Um, you know. And how is
Well,
it And that's a great point. And how is it easier to get married than it is to get a driver's license?